Hi, my name is Claire, and I'm 34 years old. This isn't a story I'm proud of, but it's mine. And maybe somewhere out there, someone needs to hear it. I had a good life. A calm, quiet home. A husband who never raised his voice. A marriage built on trust, routine, and silence. I live in a quiet house. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that wraps around you like a soft blanket. Familiar. Predictable. Tom, my husband, is a good man. The kind of man everyone says you're lucky to have. He remembers anniversaries, packs the groceries neatly, makes coffee the way I like it, 2 sugars, a splash of cream. Every morning, he kisses my forehead before work. Every night, he lies beside me without needing to say a word. And yet, somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling anything. We weren't unhappy. We just weren't anything. No fights. No fireworks. No intimacy that lingered beyond habit. I wasn't lonely because I was unloved. I was lonely because I felt invisible, like a picture on the wall that no one really looks at anymore. I smiled at the right moments, laughed when expected, wore the same perfume I wore when we first met, just to see if he'd notice. He didn't. I don't blame him, but I started to wonder, is this what forever really looks like? I didn't want drama. I didn't want danger. But deep down, something in me had started to whisper. Softly. Persistently. There must be more. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing extraordinary. No thunder, no cosmic sign. Just a conversation that went on a little too long. We were hosting a community art event at the gallery downtown, the kind of thing I usually attended out of politeness, smiled through, then quietly disappeared from. But that day, something was different. He introduced himself as Elias, a photographer. Not flashy, not overly charming, but there was something in the way he looked at people, like he was actually paying attention. I remember he said, "You have this way of standing, like you're always halfway ready to leave." I laughed, caught off guard. Most people don't see me at all. But he did. We ended up talking for almost an hour, about light, loneliness, the strange art of observing people without interrupting them. It was nothing inappropriate, nothing heavy. But when I went home that evening, I caught myself replaying our conversation, word by word. I remembered how he listened, how he made me laugh, how, for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone had looked into me instead of just at me. Tom was already home. He asked how the event went. I told him it was fine. I didn't mention Elias. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I didn't know what it was yet. The next week, Elias was there again. And again we talked. A little longer. A little closer. I noticed how he tilted his head when he was curious. How he didn't fill silences. He respected them. How he spoke to me like I was someone with layers, not just labels. One day, I wore a different shade of lipstick. Subtle, but new. He noticed. Tom didn't. It's strange how something can begin without you giving it permission. One day you're just living your life. The next you're waiting for a message, a glance, a voice that makes you feel awake again. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I had started wanting something I couldn't name. And want, when nurtured quietly, becomes need. It didn't feel like a decision. There was no dramatic music, no breathless pause before it all changed. It felt gentle, like slipping into water you didn't know you were walking toward, until it was at your waist, your shoulders, your neck. We met for coffee one afternoon. He had some photos he wanted to show me, something he was working on for an upcoming exhibit. I told myself it was innocent. It felt innocent. But I wore the red scarf I hadn't touched in years. He noticed. Of course he did. The cafe was small, dim, quiet. We sat in the back, where the walls were lined with local art and nobody looked twice at anyone. He pulled out his laptop and opened a folder labeled Ordinary Light. His photographs weren't extraordinary in content. A woman waiting at a bus stop, an elderly couple holding hands, a child reaching for a balloon. But they all felt sacred, like he'd caught the in-between of things. The truth that lives in the pauses. "You see people," I said. He looked at me, slow, steady. "So do you. That's why you feel invisible. Most people don't look back. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was thick. He closed the laptop. There was a silence, but not the kind I was used to. Not the cold space that lives in my kitchen between question and answer. This one was alive, heavy, waiting. When it happened, it wasn't reckless.
His hand didn't pull me, it hovered.
And I leaned in, not because I was swept up in passion, but because I had already left, emotionally, and this was simply the body following the heart. His kiss wasn't hungry. It was aching, careful, the kind of kiss that asks, "Are you still in there?" And I was. More than I had been in years. Later, in his apartment, a small, sunlit place with plants and books and walls that felt like they had secrets, we sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. No words, no rush, just breath, and closeness, and something unspoken passing between us that I can still feel now, like a thread pulled through the fabric of who I used to be. What happened there, I won't describe. Not because I'm ashamed, but because it wasn't about the act. It was about being remembered by someone I hadn't even met before myself. When I came home, Tom was watching TV. The soft blue light flickered across his face. He looked up and smiled. "Everything okay?" I nodded.
"Yeah.
Just tired." He opened a blanket and let me curl beside him. His arm rested around my shoulder, safe and familiar. But inside me, something had split open, and I didn't know how to close it again.
Time moved on.
It always does. The days didn't come crashing down. There were no exposed secrets. No confrontations. Just life. As usual, on the surface. Tom still made my coffee. Still kissed my forehead. Still asked how I was in that gentle, routine way of his.
And I
answered with a practiced smile. Good. Fine. Just tired. But inside, I wasn't fine. I was split in half, walking through my own life as if I belonged, while some part of me lingered elsewhere. I still saw Elias sometimes. Not as often. Not as carelessly. He never pressured me. But one evening he said, "You're only half here. With him. With me. Even with yourself." I didn't respond. Because he was right. I had carved out a secret space inside me, one no one else could touch. And it was filled with both of them. Two men who saw me in completely different ways. Two men I loved differently. One with history. One with hunger. At night, lying beside Tom in the quiet dark, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder, what kind of woman does this? Who betrays someone who's never hurt her? Who falls in love with another man and still comes home, night after night, pretending? I wanted to be the kind of person who knew what she wanted. But I wasn't. I was torn between comfort and fire. Between peace and awakening. Between loyalty and truth. And worst of all, between the version of myself I had been for years, and the version that Elias somehow uncovered, raw, present, and terrifyingly alive. One night, Tom looked at me longer than usual. "You've been quiet lately," he said. Not in a bad way, just somewhere else. I wanted to tell him. Not everything. Not the details. Just that I wasn't where I used to be. But instead, I said, "I guess I'm just tired again." And he kissed the top of my head like he always did. And I let him. Now I sit alone in our kitchen. The morning light spills across the table like it does every day. The coffee is cooling beside me. My phone is silent. The world waits. Elias told me, "You can't live in the middle forever. Eventually, the space between becomes too wide." And Tom, he still doesn't know. Not really. But I think he feels it, the distance I can't hide anymore. The fading warmth. I love them both. That's the truth I've been avoiding. Tom, for his steady hands, his kindness, the life we built together. Elias, for waking me up, for seeing me, for reminding me of who I used to be. And now I don't know where I belong. I don't know who I am without both of them pulling me in opposite directions. I used to think love was a choice. Now I'm not so sure, because I made 1,000 choices, and still, I'm here, suspended between two lives I can't fully live. I loved them both. Differently. Dangerously. And now, I don't know where I belong.